The HOA president stood on my great-grandfather's porch, waving a laminated notice, declaring my 100-year-old farmhouse now shared community property. She smiled like she'd already won, ordering a crew to install a public walking trail straight through my tomato garden. I'm Claire Whitfield, 41. Raising 2 kids alone on the farmland my family has owned since 1919. Meadow Hollow Estates sprang up around my land 8 years ago. Glossy new houses ringing my old fields and barn. Developers promised my grandfather's acreage would stay untouched. A grandfathered plot exempt from HOA rules and community assessments. Deborah Voss became HOA president last spring, obsessed with uniformity, fining neighbors over mailbox colors and unmowed lawn edges. She eyed my farmhouse constantly, calling it an eyesore, hinting the board could find ways to bring it in line. One morning surveyors marked stakes across my pasture, claiming Deborah authorized a community greenway through my private property. I confronted her at the mailbox. She waved a folder, insisting my land was covered under some obscure shared easement clause. Everything inside these boundaries belongs to the community, she said, smiling, like my deed meant nothing beside her binder. I asked to see the original agreement. She promised copies later, then quietly rescheduled our meeting 3 separate times. That night I dug through my late grandfather's files, searching for the deed that proved this land predated everything. I found the original 1919 deed, plus a 1998 county exemption letter shielding my farmhouse from any HOA annexation. I brought both documents to the next board meeting, expecting an apology. Deborah barely glanced at them, unimpressed. Paperwork gets updated, she said coldly, sliding a newer HOA map showing my farmhouse absorbed into Common Area Zone F. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably, but nobody spoke up. Everyone knew crossing Deborah meant becoming her next public target. Within days, HOA workers accidentally bulldozed part of my fence line, claiming it violated a non-existent setback ordinance. I called the county recorder's office. The clerk confirmed my exemption was still valid, untouched, legally binding as ever. Deborah dismissed the county's answer, insisting HOA covenants superseded outdated county paperwork inside her precious community. She started a petition, rallying homeowners to vote my farmhouse into shared community stewardship at the next meeting. Some neighbors signed out of fear. Deborah controlled fines, pool access, and parking permits everyone quietly depended on. My daughter came home crying, saying kids repeated Deborah's words, "Your house doesn't really belong to your family." I hired a lawyer who confirmed the HOA had zero legal authority over land outside its recorded boundary map. Deborah ignored the lawyer's letter, instead posting flyers labeling me uncooperative and hostile to community progress and unity. She organized a walkthrough of my property, marching 20 homeowners across my land like she already owned it. I stood on my porch, watching strangers photograph my barn, whispering about renovations Deborah promised for everyone's benefit. That night, someone spray-painted a crude HOA logo across my barn door, warning me to join the community. Deborah denied involvement, but I recognized her assistant's car parked near my property line the following morning. I filed a police report. Officers shrugged, calling it a civil matter between neighbors, not worth real investigation. For 2 quiet weeks, nothing happened. Deborah smiled at community events like our conflict had simply evaporated. I almost believed she'd back down, focusing instead on harvest season, canning tomatoes, rebuilding my damaged fence line. My old friend Marcus, a quiet investment banker, visited, asking gently how the HOA nightmare was really treating me. I laughed it off, not yet realizing Marcus's firm had just finalized a deal that would change everything. Deborah returned aggressive, announcing an emergency vote to rezone my farmhouse as HOA managed communal heritage property permanently. She scheduled the vote for a weekday morning, knowing working parents couldn't attend, stacking the room with loyalists. I begged the board for a postponement. Deborah refused, citing urgent community interest she alone seemed to define. The vote passed 23-4, Deborah declaring my farmhouse now technically held in community trust immediately. She handed me a letter demanding I vacate the main house within 90 days for renovation and public access. I stood frozen, realizing this woman genuinely believed she could steal my family's land through paperwork alone. That night I called my lawyer, who warned HOA overreach this extreme could take months, maybe years, to overturn. Desperate, I mentioned everything to Marcus, expecting sympathy. Instead, his expression sharpened into something calculating and curious. "Which HOA is this exactly?" he asked, already reaching for his phone, scrolling through something labeled Meadow Hollow. He explained his firm had recently acquired a struggling regional bank's distressed commercial loan portfolio, sight mostly unseen. Buried inside that portfolio sat the original development loan financing every road, pipe, and clubhouse in Meadow Hollow. Deborah's entire community existed because of a mortgage note now sitting quietly inside Marcus's newly acquired investment fund. Isetstunt. Realizing the woman threatening my ancestral farmhouse didn't know who truly held her neighborhood's leash, Marcus pulled loan documents. The HOA had missed 2 reserve fund payments, technically defaulting on maintenance loan covenants. He smiled, saying quietly, "Claire, would you like to become significantly more involved in this deal?" I nodded instantly. Within a week, I became a named partner overseeing the newly acquired Meadow Hollow development loan and its covenants. Deborah, meanwhile, scheduled my official move-out inspection. Utterly unaware her entire empire now answered to me. I said nothing publicly, letting Deborah's inspection date approach while quietly reviewing every HOA financial document available. The reserve fund was worse than expected, drained by unnecessary landscaping contracts awarded suspiciously to Deborah's own cousin. I discovered forged meeting minutes, backdated to justify the community property vote against my farmhouse months earlier. My lawyer confirmed the fraud was severe enough to void the vote entirely, independent of anything involving the loan. Still, I wanted Deborah to understand exactly how thoroughly her overreach had backfired, not just legally, but personally. I requested one final HOA board meeting, framed innocently as my formal response to the vacate the property letter. Deborah accepted eagerly, expecting surrender, already drafting a press release celebrating the farmhouse's new community heritage status. The night before, I printed loan documents, forged minutes evidence, and default notices, organizing everything into one folder. The meeting hall filled quickly, Deborah beaming at the podium, expecting my quiet, defeated compliance before her homeowners. "Claire has graciously agreed to discuss vacating," Deborah announced, gesturing toward me with practiced, condescending sympathy. I stood, calmly placing my folder on the podium, and asked to address the community's mortgage situation first. Deborah frowned, confused, insisting mortgages were unrelated to tonight's agenda about my supposedly community-owned farmhouse. I explained that Meadow Hollow's original development loan had recently changed hands, now held by my business partner's fund. Gasps rippled through the room as I revealed I personally co-managed that loan, alongside forensic evidence of missed payments. "You've defaulted on maintenance reserve covenants for 6 months," I said, sliding documents across the table toward Deborah. I then revealed the forged meeting minutes, proving the vote against my farmhouse was fraudulent from its very inception. Deborah's face drained of color, stammering that the paperwork discrepancies were simple clerical misunderstandings, nothing more serious. A homeowner stood, demanding to know why landscaping contracts routed thousands of dollars toward Deborah's own cousin's company. I announced that, given the default, our fund could technically call the loan or restructure HOA leadership entirely. I'm not interested in punishing this community, I said, only in removing whoever's been quietly stealing from it. The room erupted, homeowners shouting questions at Deborah, demanding explanations for years of suspicious fines and contracts. Security escorted Deborah outside after she refused to relinquish the microphone, still insisting everything was misunderstood clerical error. By meeting's end, the board voted unanimously to remove Deborah, rescind the fraudulent vote, and formally apologize to me. Weeks later, Deborah faced a formal fraud investigation, while I quietly kept my farmhouse, fence rebuilt, land untouched. The new HOA board, humbled and grateful, offered me a permanent legal exemption, this time notarized, triple-checked, unchallengeable. Now my grandfather's porch light still burns each evening, farmhouse standing proud, finally safe from anyone's community ambitions.